This video is a follow-on to a video that I recently posted. The recently posted video was titled Setting Modbus Parameters on a Raritan PDU using Windows Automation, brackets look no hands. This is a follow-on because I'm going to look at other ways to set those Modbus parameters. The first thing I thought about doing before resorting to the command line was seeing if we could do this with the API that Raritan provide for their PDUs. So I wrote a little Python program to do that, called Modbus settings, initially just to see which Modbus settings were in effect. So you run it and you give it the name of a PDU, and you have to use the right syntax. And it goes off and it gives you some settings. So it tells us, relates to TCP, you've got the read-only setting for Modbus, it's currently set to false. Then there's this for serial, so if you're doing Modbus over serial, I'm not quite sure how that relates to my PX2 that I've got. And a primary unit ID of 247, that's again to do with serial Modbus. But the parameters that I was really interested in changing were the TCP ones for read-only, but also the port that Modbus runs on and whether it's enabled or not. So that's probably easy to show you by logging in. And if we go to our device settings, network services, and Modbus, it's being able to change these with the API, so to enable or disable Modbus, and if it's enabled to set the read-only mode. Now, strange enough, it looks like the API only allows you to set the read-only mode to true or false, so there's no way through the API that I can see to actually do that. So I then thought we're probably going to have to look at a way to do this in the command. Oh, just to show that this is actually working, if let's enable and enable read-only and save. So when I ran it just then, it said false for TCP. Let's run the program again, and now it's coming up and it's saying true. So the API is working in that sense for the read-only value, but as I say, it doesn't tell me whether it's enabled or not. I'm just going to set things back to their default settings. And there we go. Let's just go back to device settings. So we'll come back to that later. So the next thing I thought, well, let's try and do it via the command line. So I've got a different window. If I start a secure shell session to that PDU and type in the same username and password, so same admin password, we log in and we get a prompt, and you can type things like help, and it tells you what the commands are and all this sort of stuff. Now, I won't go into how you do all these commands and things, because it's documented in the Modbus documentation. But if I run this command, show network services Modbus, it's telling us currently the Modbus is actually disabled and the read-only mode is off, is set to no. So if we go back to the Modbus settings here and we enable it, let's choose a different port, say 5502, and let's enable the read-only mode. Save those settings, go back to the terminal session, run that command again. Now it's telling us that it's enabled, it's telling us it's on that port, and read-only mode is set. So we can see what the network settings are. The next thing to do is to see whether we can change them, and actually we can, because we can go into the configuration mode, and this is all a little bit long-winded, so bear with me. So for example, I can say that Modbus enabled can be set to false, network services Modbus port, let's set that back to 5025, network services Modbus read only, and let's set that to false. So basically reset it to the defaults, apply that, and now if we go show network settings Modbus, what do I, network services. This is why some people don't like working with the command line, and it's gone back to disabled of no. So we can do this via the command line, but as you can see, that's really quite long-winded. Wouldn't it be great if we had a way that we could just automate all that typing for us? Well, as you probably get in the theme if you've watched any of my other videos, software automation is my thing. So let's log out of this, and we've got a program called Auto SSH, which can automate a secure shell session. I'm going to feed it the file name read-only modbus command, specify the username and my environment variable which I've set up. So, but the key thing here is, let's just disable this all back, put this all back the way the default settings are. Go back to device settings, back to this session, run this command, and I've got to get my I've got to specify host name, obviously. Sorry. Now what's happening now is it's run a secure shell session for me, and it's automatically typed in the password for me. When it's got to the prompt, it's typed these config commands and has set all of the various long-winded commands and exited out and finished and returned, and done that very quickly. And if we just go back onto the web interface, we go back and have a look at the network services onto Modbus, hey presto, it set them up exactly as I want them. So if we take a look at that read-only Modbus command file, all that's in there is some little comments about what it does, and then there's a series of, you've kind of got a column here which is the command prompts that that the program expects, and then on the right is the command to type when you see that command prompt. So I've got another file called show modbus.command that simply just says show the network service Modbus. So we could run this automation program, just specify a different command file now, and so it logs in and it shows me what the settings are. Now if you've got a lot of Raritan PDUs in your estate, then it's very easy, once you've got these tools in place, to then write quite simple stuff here. So set up a list of PDU names that you've got, and just to run that command, and what it's going to do is log into all three of those PDUs in turn and set those settings. So say you've got 1,000 Raritan PDUs in your estate, and somebody comes along and says, oh actually we don't want to run Modbus on port 502 anymore because everybody knows what that port number is, we want to change it to a different port number. You can set up the script here, and then so you can change to the port number that you want, and then run that script against all of the PDUs that you've got in turn. You could even split the list up, so you could have several sessions, so one list doing the first quarter or whatever if you want to save a bit of time. But you can see how quick it is. Doing 1,000 of these isn't going to take a long time. Compare that with how long it's going to take you to log into each web interface and do that. You can see that this is actually going to be quite a time saving. And you can also, just very quickly on the hoof here, if I then just change my script to, after I've done all the read-only Modbus commands to actually do the settings, I can run the command again, run the script again, and this time it's just going to show the settings. So then you can go back and actually prove that all the settings are actually correct, because you can basically go through. But even better than that, a little bit of Unix magic here. You could run this script and look for just the lines that say Modbus access port, and what we'll get here is you won't get all the extra stuff. It'll just pick out the settings to show that actually we've actually got the Modbus ports set on all three of those as 8502. So it's actually great to check whether your settings are actually correct on your estate. If you've got a lot of Raritan PDUs and you discovered the one where say Modbus was enabled and it shouldn't be, you could run a similar script to go through and say show me all the Modbus settings, and then look for any which have been enabled. Then if you find any where it's enabled and your site policy is to disable Modbus, which, because Modbus isn't the most secure protocol, you could then actually say, oh actually we found out of our 1,000 5 or 6 which have got it enabled for some reason. You can log back into those and get those set. So it's a good way to just to check that your local security policies are actually being followed. So I think that's about all I wanted to say here. Just finally, the script that I've got here that automates the secure shell. This isn't just limited to Raritan devices. Any device which you can log into and issue commands to, and I'm thinking Cisco routers and HP network switches, you could manage using this tool in a very similar way. And in fact, I've got a Cisco router on its way to me sometime next week, and I will put together another video showing some automation techniques with Cisco devices, which probably have a bit of a wider audience, but for all you Raritan fans out there, yet more software automation to make your lives easier. If you would like to find out more, there's where to find me, and thank you for watching this video.